Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about the topic Marxist approach to study Indian politics. So this is a series of course of bpsc 132 Indian government and politics of IGNOU. So let's get started. So earlier we have discussed about the topic liberal approach to study politics. Now this is second one, Marxist approach to study politics. So let's get into the introduction part. So, Marxism can be seen in two ways, as a philosophy to change the world and a perspective to study politics. So, as a philosophy to change the world, its main aim is to establish a communist society where there is no class and there is no state, and means of production, that is buildings, lands, etc., are collectively owned by the people. Then, as we are going to study perspectives to study politics, it mainly looks into the class relations, that is relation between the various classes and the relation between class and the state. So let's get started. Now we are going to meaning and scope of Marxist approach. So as I told you before, the Marxist approach studies class relations and conflict between these classes, views internal politics of a country in relation to international politics. And this is very important point, because during this time any country can't be isolated from rest of the country. Either it would have a good relation with one superpower or at least one country. For example is North Korea. North Korea has a good relation with China also. Then we are moving to analyzing relation between national politics and imperialism. As you know that is with international financial agencies like IMF, because we can say that many of the countries have started the path of globalization due to the policies which is being encouraged by international financial agencies like IMF. So that is also it is going to be studied. Then according to Marxist perspective, okay, that is also a note, base is equal to class and superstructure is equal to religion, state. So we will look into the relationship between base and superstructure in the Marxist approach also. Okay. Now we need to understand some of the basic terminologies. Modes of production. What do you mean by modes of production? Modes of production is the forces of production plus relations of production or social relations of production will give you modes of production. So we need to decode these words individually. What do you mean by forces of production? Forces of production means means of productions like buildings, labor, and so on. Then relations of production or social relations of production means the relation between employer or employee, or relation between those who own means of production and those who don't own means of production. And those who doesn't own means of production, they are called as proletariat. Okay. Now, change in means of production or in the forces of production lead to transformation of society from one stage of development to the next. So this is a very important point. So I will explain you with an example. So in a feudal system, what was the main means of production? Land. So the land was acquired by a landlord, and what happens is that tenants work under them, and they had given some sort of major portion of produce to these landlords. But when industrial revolution came into force, this all relation, that is relation between the employer and the employee, certainly drastically changed. Now the means of production or main force of production became factory and the machineries. So what happened is that the relation of landlord and tenant certainly changed to the bourgeoisie capitalists and the industrial workers. So it is being changing. So the social relation, that is relation between employer and employee, would keep on changing as there is change in means of production. So that is what I am going to say. Now we are looking to different types of Marxist approach. As I have told you that in the scope of this Marxist approach, it will look in the relation between base and superstructure. So there are two types of Marxist approach. One is classical or mechanical Marxist approach. Second is neo-Marxist approach. So classical or mechanical Marxist approach, what it says that base determines superstructure, that is class determines superstructure. So base, I mean that the dominant economic class is called what, or bourgeoisie class is called base. So this base would determine other superstructures like state, religion, etc. So state dominates over them. So that is what the idea which is given by classical or mechanical Marxist approach. Now in neo-Marxist approach, it says that base does not determine superstructures. Okay, and some of the advocates of neo-Marxist approach are Gramsci, Frankfurt schools, like consisting of scholars like Kadowski, Althusser, and Polanyi, and Prague-Milliband. Okay, then Marxist approach and political science in India. This Marxist approach are used by academicians and political activists alike, but in India most of the scholars are using liberal approach. Okay, one of the famous scholar who is using the liberal approach is the Rajni Kothari, which we have discussed in the earlier chapter, and Ranjit Guha, neo-Marxist, through a series of books known as Subaltern, reveal that ordinary people takes their decision through their consciousness, not by depending on their social relations or economic conflicts. So this is a Ranjit Guha's idea. Okay, that is, people take their decision through their consciousness. If they think it is not right, something is not right, they will follow their consciousness. So that is what this scholar is saying about. Now I am going to discuss about class relations or social relations. Okay, on the basis of extent of the means of production, that is ownership of means of production, and distribution of wealth. Different classes can be identified in different fields of economy, because some people would get more wealth and they will be rich, and some people would get moderate level wealth, so they will be placed at the moderate level. Some would get lower level of wealth, so they would be placed at low income groups. So like that, low level class. Okay, something that we will discuss in the Indian politics also. Marxist approach in India has prominently been used to analyze class formation and class relation in agriculture and industry. Okay, and it is also used to used in transition economy also. That is, transition economy means changing economy from government control to market control. Okay, Marxist perspective and classes in rural areas. Utsav Patnaik, in his book Peasant Class Differentiation, identifies following classes in agrarian sector in Haryana in India. So which are these classes? That is two. It will be divided broadly into two: rural rich and rural poor. Okay, rural rich consists of landlords, rich peasants. Rich peasants are those who live where laborers are hired and family members are not working them, and middle peasants, family members are working on the land. And please note that what is the difference between these rich peasant and middle peasants from landlords is that landlords uses relatively less advanced technologies in their farming, whereas rich peasants and middle peasants are beneficiaries of green revolution. So they used a relatively advanced technology for farming, advanced pesticides and fertilizers for farming. Okay, just analyze the differences. Then rural poor, we have small and poor peasants. They have small land, but this is not sufficient for their subsistence, and landless proletariat. Okay, that is also being asked, and this landless proletariat will work for the rich peasants. Okay, now One thing to note is that Marxist studies generally undermines the study of caste with class. Okay, that is also a fallacy of it. But a Marxist scholar named Gail Omberth observed class divisions in rural societies are intertwined in caste hierarchies. Okay, class divisions in rural societies are intertwined in caste hierarchies. That is, feudal and pure states like Bihar, beneficiary states of Green Revolution. That is, can observe that some dominant class over there would be in a very advanced positions in the farming. For example, is Jats, group of Jats. They are prominent in the land holdings and in farming sector, and they are also influential in the peasant organizations also, like Bharatiya Kisan units, etc. So that is also you need to understand in that way. Now, movements. Marxism is what is emphasizing on the material condition of the worker. Whether they are living in a good condition, whether they are having a good food, whether they are getting good salaries, etc. So they are looking at the mainly at the material condition of the class. So material condition is to include social relation, that is relation with the society and employer, and attempt them to improve their material conditions. Okay, then in India, this approach is mainly studies movements of peasants and working class. Okay, now come to peasants and farmers movement. Peasants and farmers. So what is the difference between peasants and farmers? Farmers use relatively advanced modern technology, whereas peasants do not. So that is the difference. Now in India, what happens is that we can divide peasants and farmers movements into two. That is during the colonial period and during post-independence period. So during colonial period, it was mainly peasant movements. So peasant movements, they faced problems like the exploitation by landlords, money lenders, and colonial officials. So their movement or their protest was against the exploitation of tenants by landlords, money lenders, and colonial officials. Now, during post-independent period, what happened is that this is the second type of movement. It was farmers' movement. It was in the wake of land reforms, Green Revolution, etc. So, during this post-independent movement, the main demands of the farmers was subsidized input, better remunerative price of agriculture produce, increase in time availability of electricity, problem of getting laborers to work on their field, etc. So, that is also to be noted. Then scholars analysis, various scholar analysis on a movement is that Ranjit Guha, he had written about subaltern mind, that argues that peasants rebelled against the landlords and the British oppressors due to their consciousness. So Kapil Kumar in Presence in Revolt studied peasant revolt in Oath and had occurred due to social relations and economic conditions. Okay, so can you say that Ranjit Guha is a neo-Marxist scholar? So Kapil Kumar is what type of Marxist? Yes, mechanical or classical Marxist. Okay. Now, working class movements. Working class movements is that, let me say one thing for sure, that according to Ranjit Das Gupta, Marxist approach failed to study different forms of labor, relation between workplace and community, like outside the workplace. And they also didn't study much about footloose labor. And footloose labor is a term coined by Jane Berman. Okay, and footloose labor is those who do any work, but they don't have a kind of a fixed job. Okay. Next is about Indian state. While we are talking about Indian state, we need to have a general idea about what is the Marxist idea of state. Marxists consider state as an executive of bourgeoisie or the property class. The Marxist approach analyze state by using following parameters. So we can check. If you state as a representative of class interest, how state formulates its policies about the propertied and poor class. It seeks to trace the development of state, ideological influences or orientation of the state, linking policies of state with international agencies. The example is IMF. Okay. Now we can have the meaning or the perspective of Marxist approach over Indian states by mainly by three communist parties of India, that is CPIM, CPIM, and several Naxalite parties. Okay, so let's get started with it. Because before CPI's view on Indian state is that it is a national bourgeoisie capitalist which represent national interest state with which collaborates with the foreign capital. Okay, according to CPIM, what happens is that it is a national bourgeoisie state which collaborates with the foreign capital. But in the term called bourgeoisie, it also adds landlords along with capitalists. Okay, and Naxalite views Indian state as a representative of foreign capital investors. So while analyzing these three parties view on Indian state, a common view is that it links state policy and international financial policy. Okay, so that is a common link between it. Okay. Now next is about various scholars analysis on Indian state. Okay, this is the last slide. According to C.P. Babli, state succumbs to imperialist forces, and there is a significant supporters of imperialist forces in our country. Okay. Vivek Jipar in his book Locked in Places and State Building and Late Industrialization in India says private industrialists were against Nehru's state-led development, instead preferred capitalist or market to lead development. So what happened is that during the initial phases of our independence, we have followed a USSR socialist model, that is state-led development, because many of the sectors, major industrial sectors, was government owned. But the significant change had come only during 1990s, after we have introduced the liberalization policy in our country. Then last point is that of this ignorance book, non-Marxist scholars like Rudolph and Rudolph opined India is a centrist state. So this is a very balanced view, because India is neither a kind of a bourgeoisie nor a kind of a communist state. Because in our preamble we have used the term socialist or socialism. That socialism does not mean that a state socialism. It means a democratic socialism. Okay, democratic socialism is where both elements of the capitalism as well as the kind of a socialist elements exist. So with this, I am concluding my lecture series. Hope you have enjoyed it and have a nice day.